Hey guys, tonight we slip into the muddy, chaotic streets of a medieval town where you're not just anybody. You're the town crier, the human megaphone of the 14th century. Picture, this dawn's barely cracked roosters are screaming, and you're already dodging puddles of who knows what, your throat itching to bellow the day's news. The air's thick with smoke, fresh bread, and the faint whiff of last night's tavern regrets. One wrong shout, though, and you're probably not surviving the mob's wrath or the Lord's dungeon. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I'm curious where you're drifting off tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake in a creaky loft straw, poking through your thin mattress like it's personally offended by your existence. The town's still half asleep, but you're already up, splashing icy water from a bucket onto your face. No coffee, no mercy. Just a crust of bread and a swig of weak ale to kickstart your day. Your job's simple but brutal. Be the town's voice. Every decree, market deal, or public shaming lands on your vocal cords. Historians peg town criers as official roles by the 13th century, especially in England, where kings needed loudmouths to spread their word to illiterate masses. Your throats, your paycheck, and if it cracks, you're out of a job. You pull on your cloak, a patchy thing that smells like damp wool and yesterday's stew. Your bells slung over your shoulder, heavy as a bad decision. It's not just for show. Its clang cuts through the morning fog, dragging bleary-eyed townsfolk to attention. A quirky tidbit. Some criers were paid in beer, not coin, which explains why half the morning cries sound slurred. You're lucky, though. Your town's lord tosses you a few pennies weekly, assuming you don't botch his proclamations. Historians still argue whether criers were respected or just tolerated like a rooster nobody could strangle. You trudge toward the town square, where the day's first cry awaits. The streets are narrow, lined with timber houses leaning so close they're practically gossiping. A baker's shoving loaves into an oven, and a stray dog's eyeing your bread crust like it's a five-star meal. You smirk, same buddy. The square's already stirring merchants, haggling kids chasing a squealing pig, and a fishmonger yelling about eels so fresh they're practically flirting. You take a deep breath, feeling the weight of every eye about to turn your way. Your voice isn't just sound, it's power. One bellow can hush a crowd or spark a riot. You climb onto a wooden platform, the unofficial stage for criers. It's wobbly, probably built by someone who thought good enough was a personality trait. You ring your bell, a sharp clang that makes a nearby horse snort. Faces turn grubby, curious, annoyed. Your first cry's a royal tax hike straight from the king's parchment. Not exactly a crowd pleaser, but you've got no choice. You clear your throat, praying it holds. Oyez, oyez, you boom. The old French call, that means listen up or regret it. The crowd groans and a turnip sails past your head. Charming. You keep going, voice steady, laying out the tax details. 2 shillings per household due, by Michaelmas. A woman in a wimple mutters something rude, and you bite back a grin. Gotta stay professional, even when the vibe's more pitchforks than applause. You toss in a lighter cry. Next, Widow Agnes is selling her prize sow cheap. That gets a few nods, Folks love a bargain. You're not just a news reader. You're the town's pulse-weaving royal orders with local chatter. One slip, though, and you're the village idiot. Or worse, the Lord's pincushion. The sun's climbing now, warming the square. Your throat's already scratchy, and it's not even noon. You step down, bell clanging softer as the crowd disperses. A kid tugs your cloak, asking if the king's really raising taxes. You ruffle his hair and say, "Kid kings don't ask, they demand." He scampers off, probably to tell his mates. You're not just shouting, you're shaping how the town thinks, one cry at a time. But the day's young, and your voice has miles to go before you sleep. You're weaving through the market now, the heart of the town where chaos and commerce collide like a bad dance partner. The air's a stew of smells, fresh fish, rotting cabbage, and the sharp tang of blacksmith smoke. Stalls line the square, their owners barking prices like they're auditioning for your job. You've got a royal decree to shout, but good luck getting a word in this place is louder than a drunk bard on feast night. Your bell's your only hope, so you give it a swing, its clang slicing through the din like a knife through stale bread. The crowd parts, grudgingly eyeing you, like you're about to announce another tax. You climb onto a barrel, hope it's not the fishmongers, and clear your throat. This decree's a big one. The king's banning foreign cloth to boost local weavers. Mainstream history backs this up. Medieval rulers often slapped trade restrictions to flex their power and fill their coffers. You shout the news voice booming over the grumbles. Oh yes, by royal command, no more Flemish wool. A merchant spits muttering about his stockpile. Tough luck, buddy. You keep going, detailing the fines for anyone caught selling foreign goods. The crowd's restless, and a stray apple core bounces off your cloak. Real classy folks. To lighten the mood, you toss in a local cry. Old man Cedric's got turnips for sale, half price. That gets a chuckle. Cedric's turnips are legendary, mostly for being rock hard. A quirky tidbit floats up some criers doubled as market spies, reporting shady deals to the Lord. You're not that desperate for coin, but you keep your eyes peeled. Never know when a tip might save your skin. Historians still argue whether criers shaped public opinion or just parroted orders. You feel the weight of it now. Every word a tightrope between truth and trouble. The weavers in the crowd perk up, sensing profit, while the cloth traders scowl. You're not just delivering news, you're stirring the town's economic pot. One wrong phrase, and you could spark a brawl, or worse, a boycott. You wrap up the cry voice steady, despite the sweat trickling down your neck. The barrel wobbles, and you hop down before it betrays you. The market's buzzing again, your words already rippling. A weaver claps your shoulder, slipping you a scrap of cloth as thanks. You tuck it away, might patch that hole in your cloak later, but not everyone's thrilled. A trader corners you, his breath reeking of onions, demanding you fix the decree. You shrug him off with a grin. Take it up with the king, mate. He storms off, and you make a mental note to avoid his stall. No need for enemies when you've got a whole town to please. You move deeper into the market, dodging a cart piled with cabbages. Kids dart underfoot, chasing a chicken that's clearly winning. You spot a juggler tossing apples, drawing a small crowd. For a second, you're jealous his job looks fun, and nobody's throwing fruit at him. But you've got another cry to make a reminder about the upcoming fair. You find a clear spot near the baker's stall, the scent of fresh loaves making your stomach growl. You ring your bell, and heads turn. This cry's easier. Fairs are crowd pleasers. You paint a picture, stalls overflowing with spices, minstrels strumming, maybe even a joust if the Lord's feeling fancy. The crowd's smiling now, and a girl tosses you a bruised pear. Score. You bite into it, savoring the sweetness, while you shout the fair's rules: no weapons, no cheating at dice. The last fair ended in a fistfight over a rigged game, and you're not keen on announcing another brawl. Your voice carries clear and strong, cutting through the market's roar. As you finish, a woman asks if the fair will have silk from the east. You wink and say, "Only if the king changes his mind about trade." She laughs, and you feel a flicker of pride. You're not just a crier, you're the town's storyteller, weaving news into something alive. The market's energy surges around you, a living beast of shouts and smells. Your throat's starting to ache, but there's no rest yet. The day's demands keep coming, and your voice is the only thing keeping you afloat. You're holed up in a quiet alley now, the market's chaos a dull roar behind you. Your throat's raw from that last cry, like you've been gargling gravel. Time to train your voice, because if it cracks mid-proclamation, you're not just embarrassing yourself, you're out of a job. You lean against a timber wall, the wood cool and splintery, and take a swig of ale from your flask. It's weak stuff, but it soothes the burn. The town depends on your bellow, so you've got to keep those vocal cords sharper than a blacksmith's best blade. You start with a low hum, feeling the vibration in your chest. Medieval criers' history tells us were often chosen for their lung power. Some could be heard across a mile in open fields. No microphones, just raw talent and a lot of spit. You move to scales, chanting oyez, oyez in different pitches, each one louder until a stray cat glares at you from a barrel. Sorry, fluffball practice makes perfect. You try a tongue twister. Next, 6 swans swim swiftly. It's a classic, and you stumble on the third try, chuckling at your own fumble. If only the townsfolk could see you now, mumbling like a fool. A quirky tidbit pops to mind. Some criers used herbal concoctions, honey sage, even snail slime, to keep their throats supple. You're not desperate enough for snail goo, but you do chew a sprig of mint you nabbed from the market. It's fresh sharp and wakes you up. You spit it out and try projecting again, aiming your voice at the alley's far wall. Hear ye the king's decree, you boom, and the echo bounces back. Not bad. You're no minstrel, but you've got range. Historians still argue whether criers trained formally or just learned by shouting until they didn't faint. You're self-taught, mostly mimicking the old crier who retired last year. He'd scream at you to breathe from your gut, not your neck, and you still hear his rasp in your head. You try it now. Diaphragmatic breathing, pulling air deep like you're about to blow out 100 candles. Your next cry is louder, clearer, and a passing washerwoman claps sarcastically. Save it for the square loudmouth, she teases. You grin, at least someone's listening. You shift to pacing, practicing your delivery. A good cry isn't just volume, it's rhythm, like a song without the lute. You recite a mock proclamation. Be it known, all pigs must wear hats by noon. A kid peeking from a window giggles, and you wink. Gotta keep the crowd engaged, even if it's just one grubby urchin. You try it again slower with dramatic pauses. Be it known, all pigs must wear hats. The kid's howling now, and you're tempted to keep going, but duty calls. Your voice is warming up, but it's not perfect yet. You pull out a scrap of parchment, your cheat sheet, for today's cries. Reading's not your strong suit, literacy's rare even for criers, but you know enough to decipher the Lord's scrawl. You practice the next decree a curfew for the upcoming festival. You say it softly first, then louder, rolling the words like a minstrel's ballad. By order of the Lord, all souls indoors by dusk. It's got a nice ring, but you tweak the cadence, making it punchier. Delivery's everything one flat cry, and the town tunes you out. A dog barks nearby, and you use it as a challenge, shouting over its yapping. Your voice holds, but your throat's begging for mercy. You take another swig of ale, then gargle a bit for good measure. It's not elegant, but neither's your job. You're a walking news board, not a court poet. Still, there's pride in it. Every word you shout shapes the town's day, from the baker's prices to the Lord's whims. You're the thread tying this messy place together. You wrap up with a final bellow, a practice cry about the fair's opening. Come one, come all to the grand market. It's loud enough to rattle a nearby shutter, and you smirk. That's more like it. Your throat's still sore, but it'll hold for the day's work. You tuck your flask away and step back toward the market's noise bell, clanging softly at your hip. The town's waiting, and your voice is ready to cut through the clamor like a hot knife through butter. You're back in the thick of the town, the market's noise fading as you slip into a narrower street where the air's cooler, tinged with the musty scent of damp stone and yesterday's rain. Your bell's quiet for now, but your ears are wide open. As a crier, you're not just the town's voice, you're its ears too, picking up whispers that could make or break your next cry. Gossip's a dangerous game, though. One wrong rumor, and you're not just spreading news, you're sparking trouble. Your job's to sift truth from lies, and it's about as easy as herding cats in a thunderstorm. You pause near a butcher's stall, the sharp tang of blood and herbs hitting your nose. The butcher's haggling with a customer, but his eyes flick to you wary. Everyone knows Crier's hear too much. You nod casual and move on, catching snatches of chatter. A farmer's muttering about a bad harvest. A seamstress whispers about the Lord's new mistress. Juicy, sure, but unverified gossips like spoiled ale tempting, but it'll make you sick. History shows criers were often blamed for riots if they spread false news, especially in tense times like after a bad crop. You're not keen on testing that theory. You duck into a shaded corner, pretending to adjust your cloak. A quirky tidbit. Some criers were paid to bury rumors, keeping scandals quiet for a coin or two. You've never taken that deal too risky, but the thoughts crossed your mind. The seamstress's whisper about the Lord's mistress could fetch a pretty penny from the right buyer. Or it could land you in a dungeon if it's bunk. You shake it off and focus ear tune to the crowd. A kid runs past, yelling about a two-headed calf born nearby. Cute, but you're not crying that without proof. The town's got enough to worry about. Historians still argue whether criers were neutral messengers or sneaky influencers, nudging the town's mood with what they chose to shout or skip. You feel that power now weighing every word you overhear. The harvest talk's more solid. You heard it from 3 farmers already. That's cry-worthy, a warning to stock up before prices spike. You jotted on your parchment scrap, your scribbles barely legible. The mistress rumor, though, it stays in your head locked tight. You're not dumb enough to shout scandal without a royal seal to back it up. You move toward the town well, where gossip flows faster than water. A cluster of women are chatting buckets at their feet. You linger, pretending to tighten your belt. One mentions a merchant caught watering his wine again. That's gold. You can cry a warning about dodgy traders without naming names. Keep the market honest. You flash a grin at the women, and one blushes, probably thinking you're flirting. Nope, just fishing for news. You're a crier, not a charmer, though you wouldn't mind a free pie from the baker's daughter someday. A shout pulls your attention. A cart's wheel broke, spilling apples across the street. You could cry it as a public nuisance, but it's not worth the breath. Instead, you catch a better tidbit, the miller's hiking flour prices. That's big tied to the bad harvest. You weave it into your next cry, planning a warning that'll nudge folks to buy now. Your voice is your weapon, but your ears are your scout, picking the news that keeps the town ticking. One slip, though, and you're the fool who cried two-headed calf. You test the miller's rumor, asking a passing baker if it's true. He nods grumpy, already planning to charge more for loaves. That's enough confirmation. You'll cry it at noon, framed as a heads up, not a panic. The trick is tone calm but urgent, like you're warning a friend about a storm. You practice softly. Hear ye flour, prices rise with the harvest's fall. Needs work, but it'll do. A dog sniffs your boots, and you shoo it with a chuckle. No news for you, mutt. The street's busier now, and you're ready to head back to the square. Your throat's still tender from morning cries, but your mind's sharp buzzing with the town's pulse. Every whisper's a thread in the tapestry you'll weave with your next shout. You're not just parroting orders, you're choosing what the town hears, shaping their day. It's a tightrope, and you're walking it with a bell in one hand and a lie detector in your head. You're striding through the town's heart now. The weight of your tools, bell and scroll, grounding you like anchors in a storm. The bell's bronze glint catches the midday sun, its clang a call to order in a world that's anything but. The scroll, tucked under your arm, is your script, a crinkled lifeline of ink and parchment that carries the Lord's words. These aren't just props. They're your badge, your proof. You're more than a loudmouth with a death wish. The street's alive with the clatter of carts and the chatter of traders, but all eyes snap to you when that bell rings. Your bell's no ordinary trinket. Historical records show Crier's bells were often crafted by local smiths, sometimes engraved with the town's crest to mark their official role. Yours has a simple cross etched into it, a nod to the church's grip on everything. You give it a practice swing, and the sharp peal scatters a flock of pigeons. A kid nearby mimics you yelling, "Oh yes," until his mother swats him. You stifle a laugh, imitation's flattering, but you're not hiring apprentices. The bell's your signature, as vital as your voice, and you wield it like a knight swings a sword. The scroll's trickier. It's not just paper, it's power, straight from the Lord's quill. Today's decree is about bridge tolls, doubling to fund repairs. You unroll it, squinting at the clerk's spidery script. Reading's a slog, but you've memorized enough to fake confidence. A quirky tidbit. Some criers couldn't read at all, relying on clerks to drill the news into their heads. You're luckier piecing together words like a puzzle, though you'd rather eat mud than admit how slow you are. You trace the toll decree, practicing the phrasing, so it's clear, not a riot starter. Historians still argue whether criers were seen as the Lord's puppets or the town's advocates. You feel the tug, both ways, balancing the scroll's orders with the crowd's mood. The toll hike's unpopular merchants rely on that bridge, and doubling the fees like kicking them in the purse. You'll need to soften it, maybe slip in a cry about the bridge's wobbly state to justify the cost. You're not lying, just framing. Remember that apple core some jerk tossed at you in the market? Yeah, you don't need a repeat performance. You head toward the town gate where the bridge news will hit hardest. The scroll's tucked back under your arm, safe from grubby hands. A baker waves, offering you a warm roll. You take it, mumbling thanks through a mouthful of crust. Free food's a perk, but it comes with strings. Everyone wants a favor. A shout-out in your next cry. You chew and walk, bell clanging softly at your hip. The gate's busy carts rumbling over the bridge drivers, cursing the potholes. Perfect spot for your cry. You climb onto a stone ledge, bell raised high. Oyez, oyez, you boom, and the crowd quiets grudgingly. You ring again, the sound echoing off the gate's arch. Then you launch into the toll decree, voice steady. By the Lord's command, bridge tolls double come Sunday. Groans erupt and a carter shakes his fist. You keep going, adding that the funds will fix the bridge's cracks. A few nod. Nobody wants a cart plunging into the river. You end with a lighter cry. Widow Agnes seeks a Cartwright good pay that eases the tension, and you hop down, dodging a glare from the angry carter. Your scroll's still clutched tight, its wax seal winking in the light. It's your shield proof, you're just the messenger. The bell's heavier now, or maybe that's just your arms whining. You're not done yet. Another cry's due near the tavern later. A drunk stumbles past, slurring about a ghost haunting the bridge. You roll your eyes. Ghosts don't pay tolls, but you'll keep that rumor in your pocket, just in case it's worth a laugh in the next cry. For now, you're the Lord's voice, the town's pulse, and your bell and scroll are the only things keeping you from being just another fool shouting in the street. You're slipping into the tavern now, where the air's thick with the scent of spilled ale, roasted meat, and the faint whiff of unwashed travelers. The place is a hive of noise, laughter, arguments, and the clink of mugs, like the market, but drunker and rowdier. Your bell's tucked away. Ringing it here would just get you laughed out the door. Instead, you lean against a sticky beam, blending in ears sharp, for the kind of tavern tales that could spice up your next cry. This is where the town's secrets spill, and you're here to sip them up like cheap wine. The tavern's a gold mine for gossip. Historical records note that medieval taverns were hubs for news where criers often fished for unofficial tidbits to weave into their shouts. You scan the room, a merchant's boasting about his latest deal, a farmer's griping about taxes, and two old men are swapping tales of a witch in the woods. That last one's tempting. But you've learned the hard way, cry witch, without proof, and you're dodging pitchforks by supper. You focus on the merchant catching his brag about a shipment of spices coming in. That's cry-worthy a nudge for the market to brace for higher prices. A quirky tidbit: some criers were banned from taverns for stirring up trouble with loose lips. You get why half the stories here are fueled by ale and bravado. A serving girl brushes past, balancing mugs, and whispers that the blacksmith's wife ran off with a peddler. You raise an eyebrow, but keep it to yourself. Personal scandals are a minefield. You're not crying that unless the Lord's paying you to shame someone. Instead, you file away the spice shipment and a rumor about a coming fair tax, both solid enough to pass as news. Historians still argue whether criers were trusted or seen as glorified gossips amplifying tavern tales for clout. You feel that tension now, weighing what's safe to shout. The spice news is good, it'll stir excitement without sparking a brawl. The fair tax, though, tricky. You overheard it from a drunk clerk, so you'll need to confirm it before crying it. You sidle up to the bar where the tavern keeper's polishing a mug with a rag that's seen better days. Heard anything about a new tax, you ask casual. He grunts, nodding. Clerk was moaning about it last night. That's enough for you two sources, no pitchforks. You order a small ale, more for show than thirst, and sip it while eavesdropping. A minstrel's strumming in the corner, singing about a knight who slew a dragon. The crowd's eating it up, but you smirk. Dragons are about as real as a sober tavern. Still, the song's a reminder. Your cries need flair. A touch of drama to hook the crowd. You practice the spice cry in your head. Hear ye exotic spices, flood the market. Too flat, you tweak it. Oyez saffron and pepper to burn your purse. Better punchier with a hint of sass to keep them listening. A fight breaks out near the door, two farmers squabbling over a bet. You steer clear. No need to get a black eye over someone else's bad dice. The tavern keeper yells, and the brawlers stumble outside. You use the distraction to slip closer to a table of weavers catching their talk of a guild meeting. That's useful. You can cry a reminder tomorrow, earn some goodwill from the craft folk. You're not just shouting, you're building trust, one overheard snippet at a time. The ale's gone, and your throat's grateful for the lubrication. You're about to leave when an old woman grabs your sleeve, her breath sour. Tell 'em the river's cursed, she hisses. You pat her hand, muttering something vague. Cursed rivers hard pass. But her desperation sticks with you folks. Cling to stories when the world feels shaky. Your job's to give them truth, or at least the version that won't get you chased out of town. You step back into the street, the tavern's warmth fading, ready to turn those tales into a cry that'll echo through the square. You're standing at the edge of the churchyard now, the shadow of the stone church looming like a stern parent. The air's cooler here, scented with damp earth, and the faint sweetness of candle wax drifting from the open doors. Your bell feels heavier, your scroll tighter under your arm. Announcing news near the church is like dancing on a frozen pond. One wrong step, and you're in deep. The priests don't love you stealing their flock's attention, and the faithful get twitchy when your cries clash with their prayers. Today, you've got a royal proclamation to shout, and it's not exactly holy water. The decrees about land taxes tied to the king's latest war fund. Historical records confirm medieval monarchs often leaned on the church to back tax hikes, using its moral weight to quiet grumbling peasants. You're not thrilled to cry. This one taxes are about as popular as a toothache, and doing it on sacred ground feels like begging for trouble. You pick a spot just outside the churchyard gate, far enough to avoid a priest's glare, but close enough for the crowd spilling out from mass to hear. You ring your bell, its clang sharp against the murmur of prayers. Oyez, oyez, you start voice carrying over the shuffle of feet. Heads turn, some curious, others annoyed. You lay out the tax, a penny per acre, due by Lent. The crowd mutters, and a farmer crosses himself, probably cursing you in his head. You keep going, stressing it's the king's will, not yours. A quirky tidbit: some criers were excommunicated for announcing secular news too close to churches seen as defying God's voice. You're not keen on that fate, so you keep your tone respectful, almost apologetic. No need to poke the holy bear. Historians still argue whether criers were pawns in church-state power games or just stuck in the middle. You feel the squeeze, now caught between the Lord's orders and the church's sway. A priest emerges, his robes swishing, and fixes you with a look that could curdle milk. You nod politely, wrapping up the tax cry with a quick pivot to something safer: alms needed for the poor, give at the church door. That earns a few approving nods, and the priest's scowl softens. Smooth move, you think, though your heart's pounding like a blacksmith's hammer. You step back, bell quiet, and catch your breath. A woman in a hooded cloak slips you a coin, whispering, "Thanks for the alms cry." You pocket it. Small perks keep you fed. But the tension lingers. The church isn't just a building. It's the town's conscience, and your shouts can either bolster it or burn it down. You remember that tavern rumor about the Lord's mistress. If you cried that here, you'd be dodging more than glares. You smirk, tempting, but you're not suicidal. A kid tugs your cloak, asking if the tax means his dad's farm is doomed. You crouch, softening your voice. Tell your dad to talk to the reeve, might get a deferral. The kid nods, scampering off, and you feel a flicker of pride. You're not just a mouthpiece. You're a lifeline sometimes. But the priest's still watching, so you move on, heading toward the square. You practice the tax cry again, tweaking it. For the next crowd, less royal pomp, more. We're all in this together. Gotta keep the pitchforks at bay. A funeral procession passes slow and somber, and you pause out of respect. The church bells toll, drowning out your thoughts. It's a reminder your bell's loud, but the church's is louder. You're not here to compete. You're here to survive. You slip the scroll out, glancing at the next cry, a call for militia volunteers. That'll be tricky too, but at least it's not church adjacent. For now, you're clear of the holy ground, but the weight of that priest's stare sticks with you like a warning you can't quite shake. You're trudging through the town's muddy streets, now the air heavy with a sour tang that wasn't there yesterday. Whispers of plague are creeping in like rats, slipping through cracks, and your next cry's a grim one, a warning to avoid the river, where bloated fish and a feverish traveler have folks on edge. Your bell feels like a lead weight, and your throat's tight, not from shouting, but from the dread settling in your gut. Plague's a crier's nightmare. One wrong word, and you're either calming a panic or starting one. You head toward the market square, where bad news spreads faster than fleas. Historical records show plague warnings were a crier's duty by the 14th century, especially after the Black Death tore through Europe, killing millions. Your town's been lucky so far, but luck's a fickle friend. You've got orders to cry a quarantine for anyone showing fever signs, sweats, boils, or a cough that sounds like death's doorbell. You clutch your scroll. The clerk's hasty scrawl, barely legible, and practice the words, "Oyez, shun the sick by Lord's command. Too blunt. You'll need to soften it. Keep the crowd from bolting. You find a spot near the well where people gather like moths to a flame. A quirky tidbit: some criers tied onions to their belts during plague times, believing the smell warded off disease. You're not that gullible, but you did tuck a sprig of rosemary in your cloak. Can't hurt, right? You ring your bell. Its clang sharp against the nervous chatter. Oh yes, you boom, and faces turn pale and pinched. You lay out the warning: avoid the river, burn any dead fish, and report fevers to the reeve. A woman gasps, clutching her basket, and you force a calm tone, like you're soothing a spooked horse. Historians still argue whether criers helped control plagues or just fanned fear with their shouts. You feel that razor's edge now, every word a balancing act. You add a practical cry. Boil your water. Keep your hands clean. It's not on the scroll, but you heard it from a traveling physician once, and it sounds like sense. The crowd's quiet, too quiet, and a man shouts, "Is it the pestilence?" You hesitate. Truth is, nobody knows yet. Not confirmed, you say, but stay sharp. It's the best you can do without lying or lighting a fuse. You step down, bell silent, and a kid tugs your sleeve, asking if his sick dog counts. You crouch, keeping your voice low. Keep it indoors, lad, and wash your hands. He nods, scampering off, and you hope you're right. The square's buzzing now, folks whispering plague, like it's a curse word. You overhear a baker muttering about boarding up his shop, and your stomach twists. If the town shuts down, your cries won't mean much. You remember that tavern tale about a cursed river. Suddenly, it doesn't sound so crazy. A woman offers you a cloth mask stitched with herbs. You take it more to be polite than because you trust it. Wear it, she insists, eyes wide. You nod, tucking it away. No need to spook her further. You're about to move on when a merchant grabs your arm, demanding you cry that his wares are plague-free. You shake him off with a grin. Unless the Lord stamps that claim, my lips are sealed. He storms off, and you make a mental note to dodge his stall. Greed's a worse disease than fever. Your throat's dry, but you've got one more cry. Before you rest, a call for healers to report to the Lord's hall. You climb back onto the well's edge, bell ringing again. Oyez, healers needed, bring your herbs. A few nod, but most just stare, fear etched into their faces. You hop down, the weight of their eyes heavier than your bell. The plague's not here yet, but its shadow is, and your voice is the only thing holding the town together or tearing it apart. You head toward the tavern, hoping for a scrap of good news to cry tomorrow. You're in the thick of the festival. Now the town square transformed into a riot of color and noise, like someone spilled a painter's palette over a drunken brawl. Banners flutter, stalls brim with honeyed cakes and trinkets, and minstrels pluck lutes with more enthusiasm than skill. Your bell's practically vibrating with the energy, and your voice is primed to lead the chaos. Today, you're not just crying news. You're the festival's herald, announcing contests, feasts, and the Lord's grand appearance. It's your chance to shine, to make the town forget those plague whispers and tax gripes, if only for a day. You weave through the crowd, dodging jugglers, tossing flaming torches, because apparently that's a good idea in a town made of wood. Historical records show festivals were key for medieval morale, with criers often doubling as MCs to hype the crowd and keep order. Your scrolls packed with today's schedule archery at noon, a pig chase for the kids, and the Lord's speech at dusk. You climb onto a sturdy platform, unlike that wobbly market barrel, and ring your bell. The clang cuts through the chatter like a hot blade, and every eye locks onto you. Oyez, oyez, you boom, grinning as the crowd cheers. You launch into the festival's lineup voice, rhythmic, almost sing-song. Archers to the field, pigs to the streets, and feast at sundown. They roar, kids already eyeing the pig pen. You toss in flair, describing the Lord's banquet with meats to make your mouth weep. A quirky tidbit, some criers were paid extra to exaggerate festival grandeur, puffing up the Lord's ego. You're not above a little embellishment, keeps the crowd happy, and the Lord off your back. A girl tosses you a flower, and you tuck it into your cloak with a wink. Score 1 for charm. Historians still argue whether criers at festivals were genuine crowd pleasers or just lordly propaganda machines. You feel both today, stirring joy while slipping in reminders to honor the Lord's generosity. You cry the archery rules next. No aiming at spectators. A rule born from last year's near miss with a butcher's hat. The crowd laughs and you lean into it. Aim for the target, not old Tom's head. That gets a howl and you're riding the high voice soaring like a hawk. Your throat's holding thanks to that mint sprig you chewed earlier. Small victories. You hop down, bell clanging softer now, and move toward the pig chase. Kids are already squealing louder than the pigs, and you cry the start. Release the hogs, the crowd surges, parents cheering as their kids dive into the mud. You spot the baker from the market, his apron splattered, laughing for once. It's a rare day when the town feels like a family, not a mob. You remember that tavern spice rumor. Today's the day to cry it with stalls selling saffron at eye-watering prices. You climb a nearby cart, bell ringing, and shout, Oyez, spices flow, but purses beware. Merchants nod, crowds swarm, and you've just made someone's day. A juggler stumbles nearby, dropping a torch that fizzles in the dirt. You smirk, stick to apples, mate. Your next cries for the Lord's speech, a tougher sell. He's not exactly beloved, not after that bridge toll hike you cried by the gate. You keep it simple. Our Lord speaks at dusk. Gather by the hall. A few grumble, but most are too busy with mead and dancing. You're tempted to join them, but duty's a harsh mistress. You practice the feast cry instead, adding a line about ale that flows like rivers. If that doesn't pack the tables, nothing will. The sun's dipping, painting the square gold. Your voice is hoarse but game, and the festival's pulse is your rhythm. A kid hands you a sticky bun, and you munch it gratefully, crumbs dusting your cloak. You're not just a crier today. You're the town's heartbeat, weaving joy into every shout. But dusk's coming, and the Lord's speech looms. You'll need every trick to keep this crowd cheering instead of chucking turnips. You're standing before the Lord's hall. Now, the festival's glow, fading behind you as the sun sinks into a bruise purple sky. The air's crisp, carrying the scent of wood smoke and the distant tang of roasted pork from the feast. Your bell's at your hip, but your scroll's the star today, clutched tight as you prepare to cry a noble's demands. The Lord's latest order is a doozy. Every able-bodied man must supply a bow and 3 arrows for the king's army by month's end. It's not a request, and you're the unlucky soul tasked with shouting it to a crowd still tipsy from festival ale. Historical records show medieval lords often used criers to relay military levies, especially when royal wars drained local resources. This bow and arrow mandate is tied to the king's brewing campaign across the channel, and the lords leaning hard on the town to comply. You pick a spot outside the hall where torchlight flickers on stone walls and ring your bell. The clang feels sharper, more urgent, cutting through the post-festival hum. Faces turn merchants, farmers, even a few weavers still clutching their mugs. They're not cheering like they were for pig chases. Oyez, oyez, you call voice steady, but laced with the calm you've practiced for bad news. You unfurl the scroll, reading slow. By the Lord's command, all men supply a bow and 3 arrows. Groans ripple, and a blacksmith mutters something you're glad you can't hear. You push on detailing drop-off points at the armory, stressing it's for the king's honor. A quirky tidbit. Some criers were pelted with mud for announcing war levies, especially when harvests were lean. You scan the crowd, half expecting a clod to sail your way. So far, so good, just glares. Historians still argue whether criers soften noble orders to avoid revolt or just read them straight, risking the mob. You're walking that line now, softening the cry with a nod to the town's pride. Show the king our strength. It's not quite propaganda, but it's close. A farmer spits, and you pivot, tossing in a lighter cry to ease the sting. Also, the miller seeks a new apprentice. Good wages. A few chuckle, and the tension dips. You're not dodging mud yet, but your heart's still pounding like a war drum. The Lord Steward is watching from the hall's doorway, his eyes narrow, ensuring you don't flub the decree. You remember that churchyard priest stare. Same vibe, different boss. You wrap up the cry voice firm. Bows by month's end or face the Lord's justice. The crowd disperses muttering, and you step down, scroll rolled tight. A boy asks if his dad's old hunting bow counts. You shrug gentle. Take it to the armory. Let them decide. He nods, and you hope you haven't just sent him to a scolding. A woman slips you a scrap of bread, a quiet thanks for the miller's cry. You pocket it grateful. Your stomach's been growling since that sticky bun at the festival. But the noble's demand lingers heavy as your bell. You overhear a weaver whisper about hiding his bow, and you pretend not to notice. Snitching's not your style, but you know the steward's spies are everywhere. That tavern rumor about the Lord's mistress floats back. Imagine crying that instead of this war nonsense, you'd be dodging more than mud, probably. You move toward the square, where stragglers are still dancing to a lone piper's tune. Your throat's sore, but you've got one more cry tonight. A reminder about tomorrow's market hours. You practice it softly. Oh yes, market opens at dawn. Simple, safe, no angry blacksmiths. The festival's joy feels distant now, replaced by the weight of the Lord's will. You're not just a crier. You're the rope in a tug-of-war between noble whims and town grumbles, and your voice is the only thing keeping it from snapping. You're weaving through the town's evening bustle now, the air sharp with the tang of burning tallow and the faint sweetness of fresh straw scattered on the streets. Torches flicker, casting long shadows, and the festival's glow is just a memory. Your bell's a familiar weight, but tonight, it's your voice that's got to carry the day, or rather, the crowd's attention. A rival crier's shown up some loudmouth from a neighboring town, and he's stealing your thunder with a voice like a bull and a flair for dramatics. He's crying news of a royal wedding, and the townsfolk are eating it up like it's free pie. Your job's to outshine him, or you're just background noise. Historical records show rival criers weren't uncommon, especially in market towns where news overlapped and egos clashed. This guy's no amateur. He's got a shiny new bell and a cloak that doesn't look like it's been chewed by moths. You spot him near the tavern, bellowing about the king's betrothal to a foreign princess complete with embellished tales of golden carriages. The crowd's swooning, and you grit your teeth. You've got to cry about a new trade guild forming solid, but not exactly heart-fluttering. Time to step up. You pick a spot across the square, climbing onto a sturdy cart. You ring your bell, its clang cutting through the rival's honeyed words like a blunt axe. Oyez, oyez, you shout, voice pitched to drown him out. Heads turn and you launch into the guild cry. Merchants join the trade guild, secure your wares. You add flair, painting a picture of prosperity. Markets thriving, purses full. A quirky tidbit. Some criers resorted to insults to outdo rivals, calling them croaking frogs mid-cry. You're tempted to sling a jab. His cloak does look like a peacock's mistake, but you keep it clean, for now. Historians still argue whether rival criers were friendly competitors or cutthroat enemies, sometimes bribing tavern keepers to sabotage each other's gigs. You feel the heat now, his eyes locking onto yours as he rings his bell louder. He's crying about wedding feasts, now promising details you know he's making up. You counter with a local hook. Guild members get first pick at the fair's spices. That spice rumor you cried at the festival pays off, merchants perk up, and a few drift your way. Score one for you, Peacock. You hop down, bell still ringing, and move closer to the crowd's heart. A kid cheers for you, waving a stick like it's a tiny bell. You grin. Loyal fans are rare. Your throat's burning, but you've got to keep the momentum. You cry again, adding a jab at the rival's news guild's real, unlike some far-off wedding tales. The crowd chuckles, and his face reddens. Not so shiny now, mate. You remember that Miller's Apprentice cry. Small local news. Keeps you grounded, while his big stories risk fading when the ale wears off. He's not backing down, though, shouting about the princess's dowry, tossing in gems and silks. A woman sighs dreamily, and you roll your eyes. Time for a bold move. You climb back onto the cart, bell blazing, and cry a mix of guild news and a festival callback. Join the guild feast like lords at the fair. It's a stretch, but it works. The crowd's clapping, and a merchant tosses you a coin. You catch it midair, winking. Eat that, rival. Your rival's voice falters just for a second, and you seize it, crying louder. Oyez, guild sign up at dawn. Don't miss out. The square's yours again. And he's left, repeating his wedding cry to a thinning crowd. You step down, throat raw, but smug. A baker slaps your shoulder, muttering, "Good to have our crier back." You nod, hiding a smirk. This town's yours, and no fancy cloaks changing that. But you'll keep an ear on him. Rivals don't quit easy, and your voice has to stay sharper than ever. You're stalking the town's darkened streets, now the night air biting at your nose, with a mix of frost and the faint stink of midden heaps. Stars prick the sky, and the only sounds are the creak of shutters and the occasional hoot of an owl. Your bell's muffled under your cloak. You're not crying yet, just joining the night watch, a grim crew of torch-bearing men who patrol to keep the town from burning or thieving itself to death. Tonight, your job's to shout curfews, warning stragglers to get indoors before the watch locks the gates. It's less glamorous than festival cries, but no less vital one missed curfew, and you're explaining to the Lord why a drunk's looting the baker's shop. Historical records show criers often doubled as night watch heralds, enforcing curfews in medieval towns to curb crime and fire risks. You fall in step with the watch, their torches casting jittery shadows on timber walls. The lead watchman, a grizzled man with a scar, like a crescent moon, grunts your orders. Cry the curfew at each quarter, clear and loud. You nod, bell ready, and practice softly. Oh yes, all souls indoors. Gates close at midnight. It's blunt, but night calls for clarity, not poetry. Your throat's still raw from out shouting that peacock-cloaked rival. But you've got no choice. Duty doesn't sleep. You reach the first corner, near the tavern where you fished for gossip. It's quiet now, save for a drunk, slumped against a barrel, snoring like a boar. You ring your bell. Its clang sharp in the stillness and cry. Oh yes. Curfew calls home by midnight. The drunk stirs, muttering, and stumbles off. Good enough. A quirky tidbit. Some criers used rhymes to make curfews stick, like to bed or lose your head. You try it on the next street, voice low but clear. Oh yes, to bed, or trouble's fed. A shutter cracks open and a woman hisses for quiet. You smirk. Sorry, lady. It's the job. Historians still argue whether curfew cries reduced crime or just annoyed everyone into compliance. You feel the weight of it, each shout a thread in the town's fragile order. The watch moves on boots, crunching on frost, and you keep pace, scanning for stragglers. A shadow darts near an alley, and the watchman's hand grips his cudgel. You cry again, louder. Oh yes, gates close. No lingering. The shadow vanishes. Thief or scared kid, you don't care as long as they're gone. The watchman nods, and you feel a flicker of pride. You're not just shouting, you're guarding the night. At the market square, you spot a late merchant packing his stall. You ring your bell, and he waves, hurrying. Oyez curfew's near. Clear the streets, you call, adding a touch of festival flair to keep it friendly. He shouts thanks, and you remember that spice cry. His stall was swamped after you announced it. Small wins. The watch loops toward the church, its spire a black spike against the stars. You're careful here, keeping your cry soft to avoid another priestly scowl. Oyez home all by midnight's toll. A beggar shuffles off, and you toss him a crust from your pocket. Night's cold enough without starving. A dog barks, and the watchman mutters about wolves. You roll your eyes, more likely a stray than a pack, but the night plays tricks. Your final cries near the gate, where the wind cuts like a blade. You ring your bell voice, booming. Oyez, gates locked to bed, to bed. The watchman bolts the gate, and you're done. Your throat's screaming, but the town's tucked in, safe for now. You remember that plague warning nights like this make you wonder if it's creeping closer. For now, you trudge back with the watch, their torches dwindling your voice, the last echo in the silent streets. You're standing in the town square at high noon, the sun blazing like it's got a personal grudge. The air's thick with dust, sweat, and the faint reek of livestock, and a crowd's gathering drawn by the grim spectacle of a public trial. Your bell's heavy in your hand, your scroll damp from your grip. Today, you're crying the details of a merchant accused of cheating weights, a crime that's got the town buzzing with outrage and curiosity. Your job's to announce the trial's start, the charges, and the Lord's call for witnesses, all while keeping the mob from turning into a riot. No pressure, just your voice between order and chaos. Historical records show criers were central to medieval trials, broadcasting charges and verdicts to ensure public trust or fear injustice. The merchant, a Weasley type, you've seen watering his wine stands, bound near a wooden platform guarded by the Lord's men. You climb onto a stone block bell, ringing sharp to hush the chatter. Oyez, oyez, you shout, voice cutting through the crowd's murmur like a scythe. Heads snap your way, and you unroll the scroll, reading slow. Hear ye. Thomas the merchant stands trial for false weights. Boos erupt and a cabbage sails toward the accused. You bite back a grin, nice aim, but you're not here to cheer. You lay out the charges, shorting grain sacks, pocketing extra coin. The crowd's restless, and you keep your tone, even stressing the Lord's justice will prevail. A quirky tidbit: some criers were tasked with crying punishments post-trial, like branding or banishment to scare others straight. You're not there yet, but the thought makes your stomach twist. You call for witnesses per the scroll. Speak now or hold